Hello, I am sharing with you a spread that I did for the season of Fairytales. This one was one of my last spreads that I needed to do, and so I just flipped through some magazines because I wasn't really feeling super inspired, but I did want to have a pretty cool spread to finish up the book. So I flipped through some magazines and I actually found some fairy tale like images and that were in kind of blues and cool colors. So I started by doing what I often do when I'm not feeling super inspired and just wanting to get started, is just put some color down on paper. And I use the Holbein acrylic gouache in blue, which it's funny, this week I just have been using a lot of blue. I kind of seem to go through phases where I pick a color and use that a lot in different projects, different spreads, and this week is blue. We're in a cool color stage, I guess. So I just dolloped the paint onto the page, and I had kind of worked ahead of myself, so the paint was kind of leaving extra marks where it had been dolloped, so I probably need to only work one dollop at a time, or just put it on my palette and spread it out from there. It really doesn't matter on the first layer usually, because I tend to put a lot of layers of stuff over, so that you won't even see those in the end. Here's the first image I found. I knew I had a magazine that had these like kind of enchanted forest images. It was a Vogue magazine from a couple of years ago, and the actual pages are all gone from the magazine, but this one was in the table of contents, so I was able to find one page which was perfect for this. I'm also using the Posca, some new Posca paint markers that I got. This one has like a really broad tip. You can kind of see it there. It's a pretty big rectangular tip. And I love it. It's so good. They are now carrying them at a local art store here in Portland, so I can just go and get whatever color I want, which is my recommendation. I had gotten one of the whole box sets of the Posca with kind of the rounded tip, and there's just colors I don't use. I never use purple, and a couple other colors. I rarely use red, so I should have just gotten a few of the markers in the colors that I actually use. So that would be my recommendation if you go with a Posca. And there's my wolf, because there's always wolves in fairy tales. And now I'm putting the image down. I kind of ripped it up to make it so it wasn't so straight, and make it fit on the page a little better without taking up the whole page. I use a combination of like a glue tape roller with double-sided tape and a glue stick on most of the images that I put down. The glue tape really adheres the image to the page, and the glue stick kind of gets around the corners and the edges where I don't quite get. I'm getting ready to put this butterfly wing down. It's going to go across the center of my art journal, and I always cut the images if they cross over, because I don't like them like having to bend in the fold, because usually it doesn't work so well, and then there's kind of a bubble up there. So you can see how I cut it in half there and glued it down. That's just my strategy. I mean, people might not mind that that kind of fold up that happens in the middle, but I prefer to cut mine, so that's what I do. It's not perfect, but it works. Now I'm getting ready to add another layer of paint on which is funny because when I had thought about this spread, I had used, it's an old book page, and then the first layer on the left is kind of this cool graph paper, and so I was kind of excited about having those peek through in a way, but by the end they're mostly all covered up, so maybe a goal of mine in the future will be to make a spread that you can actually see those elements more, because they're there, but I have a hard time with kind of minimalism, I guess. I just kind of keep going. Most used paint tube I have is the white. Actually, almost out. I noticed that the Posca black is kind of smearing through to the other, and I don't know, maybe it wasn't quite dry. I was working pretty fast. As you can see, I'm even using my heat gun to try to speed it along at different points. So maybe it wasn't quite dry. I don't know. I'll have to play with that and test it out and see what was going on with that. If it does smear or if it just wasn't dry. For today's piece, I used a strategy that I like to use often, is just to collect up some different collage elements to kind of inspire the piece, and a lot of the collage elements that I had on my desk I didn't even end up using. This one I wish I wouldn't have drawn the circles around the words that were kind of standing out to me, but I did, and then when I was done, I really didn't like the way it looked, so I'm gonna end up covering it up. When I first try to like cover it up with kind of a subtle color, but you can still see it. I wish I wouldn't have put the circles, because I think it would have been cool to have maybe some of those words peeking out. But it's just not quite working. I don't often, have words peeking out of book pages, so that's kind of something new, and I kind of failed this time, but hey, it's okay. I can just, cover up my mistake, which is exactly what I do. And I didn't like the subtle cover, so now we're gonna just cover it all in black. This heat gun was one of the best purchases I made. So now I've come up with the words that I want to put down on the page, but before I put the words down, I usually write them out, especially if I'm like making up the words on the fly, and sometimes I'll even like write them bigger in the style that I might put on the actual page. This time I just wrote the words out, and then I got my other new Posca paint marker, and I'm just going with it. This marker is actually a brush marker, and I think I like it. I wish the white were a little more opaque going down. I end up having to put a couple layers down to get it to be a little darker. Or I guess not darker, like more opaque, so that you can see it. But the brush is pretty nice. It's was kind of playing with pushing in on the end to see if I could get more paint to come out. I don't really know if that's a strategy. There's a little set of images on the side of the marker that shows you how you get the paint flowing, because it's, you know, it's different than the other Posca brushes where you kind of push in the tip, you know, and kind of pump that to make it go. There's actually a button on the top of the pin. You can see there's like a little kind of white cap there, and you take that white cap off and you push it in and push it in, push it in, and it pumps the paint down into it. So I was playing with it to see, could I get more paint to come out? I didn't do it too much because I didn't want the paint just to come flowing out and, you know, ruin the page. So I don't know if that's an effective way of doing it or not, but mostly I just redraw over the letters. Now I'm just adding a few marks here and there, just to add a little more to the page, no rhyme or reason. This marker makes really nice little, almost teardrop-like shapes. They're not perfect. So I'm just doing some finishing touches on this page with the lettering, and I think that is how I will wrap up this spread. I am pretty happy with it. If you want to see more, check out my Instagram at Vine and Thistle. Thanks!